Hi, I'm Paul. For this video, I'm going to talk about some of the ways I think to try to find this enlightenment or peace or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, and some of the ways which a lot of us think are important, but perhaps aren't really so important. Many of us have heard that we have this I, the ego self, which is a construction of thought, or perhaps should I say, it is a thought that every other thought comes from. Like we could say, I think, I want. You see that I in the first place is a thought that seems that every other thought comes from. So that would be the center. And one of the well-known ways that have been talked about is to observe the I, observe this thought of where every other thought comes from. And you see, we could do this just by looking inside of our mind and saying, what exactly is this I? Is it a thing? Is it just a thought? See, that's quite a good way of finding the falsity in this idea of the I. But for some people, it's hard to be able to observe that, especially when you're so used to living in thought all the time. See, a lot of us tend to seek for other spiritual teachers, maybe the best spiritual teacher, the one who has the most knowledge, which is not a good idea. A lot of us like the way that some spiritual teachers use special words like the cosmos or full enlightenment, higher consciousness, and so on and so on. And I don't recommend listening to one word of this. When I say don't listen to one word, I mean it's fine to listen. But you see, if I say you need to find the higher cosmos, whatever, you see, if you're really desperate to try and find this enlightenment, then it sounds like a really shiny object to grab onto. But when it's a shiny object, who is it who's grabbing onto it? It's the ego. The ego wants to make something of it. It wants to grasp onto something to say, yes, this is the direction to go. And then it starts making this image, making stories up on it, trying to explain it and understand it. You see, the ego likes to fill in gaps, likes to try to explain things. You see, when it does this, it can very easily go into a delusion that you wouldn't even recognize. You see, there's been tests done on people. Said this before with right hemisphere damage and the what do you call it? Psychologist, let's say. Psychologist tests the person with the damage in the right hemisphere, therefore must be speaking to the left hemisphere and says, can you move your arm, which is paralyzed because of the damage to the right hemisphere? And the left hemisphere says yes, only the arm doesn't move. The psychiatrist says, but you didn't move your arm. And the left hemisphere says, what, that arm? That's not my arm, that's your arm. You see, the left hemisphere tries its best to fill in gaps, and it's, well, from the left hemisphere, it's impossible to see the truth or the falsity in it. You see, when someone tries handing a shiny object like higher consciousness, cosmos, so on, and you don't understand what that is, then the left hemisphere grabs onto it and then tries to explain it away and make some shiny object out of it. So I don't recommend this. So you could listen to it. If I say to you, you need to find the cosmos, whatever, then say, well, that's fine, but I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to pop that in a part of my brain where I don't need to give it any attention whatsoever until I could understand what that means. And therefore you put it aside, you see. you don't want to give yourself shiny objects to grab onto, because then the left hemisphere is going to want to start, or when I say left hemisphere, I mean ego is just going to want to try and make some sort of an image or story out of it. So that's a bad idea. There's meditation that people talk about. That's a good idea. Meditation is very good. I don't think it can take you quite all the way. Maybe it can. But for now, I'm going to say it can't, because the way that we're taught to do meditation is to find the stillness, find the awareness, to not focus on thoughts. And this can certainly help you find a place of awareness, I suppose, where you can view thoughts from another side, let's say. And you see, once you've gained this capability, then you would notice that thoughts don't seem to have quite the effect on you. Which means that if the thoughts aren't having quite so much effect, you're able to start observing more inside of your mind without the fear of it attacking you. But true meditation isn't really about just finding awareness or trying to silence, which you don't try to silence your thoughts, you just ignore them. Something I used to say a while ago, actually. If you'd imagine being, let's say, on a park bench and there's a dog barking in the distance. You see, if you're going to say that dog's driving me insane, then you're actually putting your focus on the dog. But is there a place in your mind where the dog can be barking and not have an effect on you at all? And this is what it's like with thoughts. You see, the thoughts are like the dog barking. But if you're reacting to them thoughts and you're focusing on them, talking about focus, actually, focusing is quite a good tool as well, and it doesn't really get talked about very much. You see, the focus you need is a focus in awareness. You also need to be able to focus when the thoughts are arriving that you don't want, and remind yourself to move away from the thoughts. One of the other tools which never gets talked about is trying to focus on feelings. See, let's say I was talking about meditation, different types of meditation. You could lie down, sit down, close your eyes, have your eyes open and stare at something. And let's talk about staring at something. Let's just say you've got a candle and you want to meditate with the flame on the candle. You sit there and stare at the candle. You don't allow thoughts in, or you don't focus on the thoughts, you just stare at the flame. Just observe the flame. You see, this is like observing feelings. So I'm sat here now, I could feel the chair on my back, and I could just focus on the feeling of my back on the chair. I could feel my foot on the floor, and I just focus on my foot on the floor, that I could feel the floor. I observe the countryside. I see trees. I just focus on seeing the trees. I don't try to apply any names, shapes, or anything to the tree. Just observe the tree itself. Same with the grass and so on. Perhaps taking off your shoes and standing on the ground I find to be quite good as well. But the idea is to keep your focus on the feeling. You see, thought does try to come in and then you disappear into thought. Then you've got to realize that you're in thought and bring yourself back to feelings. Right now I could feel wind on my face. Just stick with that feeling. You see, when you get quite good at just sticking with the sensations or feelings, you might be able to notice things coming through in the mind. like I'm sitting here now and just observing the wind in my face, and let's just say I start to get this tension inside of me. And this tension, I could put a label on it. The label is boredom. And I could feel this boredom trying to tear me away, trying to pull me inside to pick up my phone and go on YouTube, Facebook or something. But rather than just giving in to this tension, rather than trying to apply any more names on it like boredom, I just sit here and look at the tension. Where is the tension? Tension feels like it's in my lower chest, my stomach. It feels like it's trying to pull me. The more that I try to ignore it, some other sensations come in and trying to push me even harder. To me, rather than wasting all our time on trying to listen to the next spiritual teacher and hoping that they have a key which could unlock the door and I could just walk through and suddenly find enlightenment, I think really it takes, I'm going to say takes effort, but really, it actually doesn't take, oh, it does take effort for a person who's been so used to relying on thoughts for distractions and excitement and so on. Or it feels like it's taking effort, because when you try to ignore the thoughts, then this tension comes in and it seems like you're trying to fight it, and that seems like it's taking a lot of effort. But once you get past that, just observing, and you suddenly realize it's even less effort than anything else. You suddenly realize that you spent your whole life fighting inside of your own head, applying energy into the next shiny object that you can think of, or so on. But the main point of what I was saying there is it might seem like it's a lot of effort just to observe things. I guess what I'm really trying to say is do it. Go outside, stare at trees, focus on your feet, focus on the wind on your face. Just sit there, even if you can only do it for a minute or two without thought taking over. It all helps a lot. If you could get away with doing a minute this week, maybe get away with 2 or 5 minutes next week, I think this will be more beneficial than listening to what anybody's got to say, although I think that can only take you to a certain distance, and then perhaps you do need to listen to some things that people say, I guess. But the point I'm making, I guess, is the most beneficial way to try and find enlightenment is to actually try and find enlightenment, try and find peace, focus on the stillness, focus on just feeling, focus on staring at nature. Actually do it. When thoughts pop up, get rid of them. That sounds so easy and we think it's so hard. It's really not actually that hard, it just takes practice. A thought pops into my head at the moment, I don't know, I'll think negative, I'm stupid. Quite easy, just, no I'm not, go away. Get rid of that thought. Sounds like it's hard, but have you ever actually really tried to just say, I'm not listening to you. I'm just not listening to that thought. I'm just going to move away from it. Doesn't matter how much it seems to attack me, I'm just not going to listen. I'm just going to move away from that thought. You see, we could either say or get attached onto that thought of something sad or worry or fear or so on and get dragged into it. Or we could just say, I'd much rather just stare at that tree. And then I suppose boredom kicks in and says, this isn't enough. I would rather think thoughts like I'm stupid or something. I don't know, but that seems like the crazy thing that our mind keeps on doing to us. Anyway, I don't really think I've got a lot else to add to it. I suppose the main point I was trying to say is listening to spiritual teachers is not the don't know what can I say. I want to say not the best way. No, I'm going to say not the best way. Actually doing the work yourself. Actually taking the time out. I think that's the most beneficial. If you're saying to yourself, yeah, but what am I supposed to search for? What am I supposed to look for when I do it myself without listening to somebody who tells me what to do? Well, look for anything. You don't have to, there's not any real special thing that you're supposed to observe. Look at a tree. Just look at it. Maybe then something pops up in my head. I'm stupid or whatever. Fine. Look at that. Or just get rid of it. You see, there's not anything. We don't have. When we start trying to find things, we're trying to seek. And that just leads us away from what's happening now or just observation or so on. So we're not looking for anything. We're just observing. And I think that's probably the best way to try and find enlightenment. Anyway, that is all I've got to say. So thanks for listening.